How about that for a game one, huh? That's how you start a postseason, baby. Thanks for being here, everybody. Giving us some time for everyone to get in, me to tweet out all the links necessary, and thank you for joining us. Guardians, a game one winner over Detroit, and how about that for a start? 7-0 to begin things. We got a lot to talk about in a short amount of time to do it, but I wanted to be here with you, doing it solo. Zach will be with me at some point later, whether we're doing it later tonight or early tomorrow. We're going to have so much content over the next several weeks, hopefully, maybe the next month, for as long as this ride does continue. But I just wanted to be here with you and give you a chance to react to a huge 7-0 Guardians win over Detroit, where really we're talking about the script that Stephen Vogt wants to follow, right? We've been talking about this on the show for what feels like months at this point, but you hope that you would get enough offense, and then your starter goes out and gives you just enough that you can get it to your bullpen, and you ride that all the way through as long as it lasts. And you couldn't have asked for a better outcome in game one. It was a matchup that we were not expecting. At least I wasn't. I wasn't expecting to see Cleveland-Detroit, and two clubs that are looking to do a lot of things similar, whether it's trying to ride that pitching chaos that Detroit used to down Houston in the first round, relying on your ace, certainly when he's in there, and we'll see more of Detroit's ace coming up later in this series with Tarek Skubal. So it was extremely important that Cleveland gets game one, and they did. They followed the script, but most importantly, it was a quick start, and Tanner Bibee just does what he's done all season long. So we're here to talk about it with you. It's the Selby's Godcast post-game show with me, TJ. Again, if you're just joining us, we will be doing full episodes, and we've got so much fun coming up for this entire postseason ride. But this is about you and your chance to react, your first chance to react, and we'll be here for 20 minutes or so. But just wanted to give everyone an opportunity to get in here. Let's talk about what your feelings are. I know I see Hammy Buck in the chat. I see Tony, Cleveland, Tyler, Patrick, everyone in here. Cleveland John, B Skrills, what's up, bud? We're going to get to all of your reactions coming up. Real quick, let's just roll through some of the first things that I wrote down. I got a full list of everything from minute one. I feel like my entire list here, I feel like Stephen Kwan taking journal entries. Just don't screen cap that. But a lot of thoughts coming out of game one against Detroit. And I think, first of all, it was that fast start that really got us going in a positive direction, where we're talking so much, maybe not in this show, but I think nationally there's some conversation. Locally, there's some conversation, that rust versus rest factor. And Zach and I have both said on this show for the past several weeks that, yeah, I mean, it could be a factor if you let it be a factor. Certainly, teams at this point have gotten into different ways that they can try to offset that. For Cleveland, it was simulated games at the ballpark. You're not going to be able to simulate even a normal game, forget a playoff atmosphere, but it's the best thing you got. The most important thing, you don't have to participate in what is likely going to be a coin flip in the first round. I mean, would Houston prefer to have the rust factor to overcome that as opposed to getting taken down in a sweep by Houston in the first round? Absolutely. So it was extremely important for Cleveland to be able to use that to their benefit, take the rest that we know this bullpen could use. You know, guys are beat up. Naylor's pretty much always beat up. Stephen Kwan has been beat up. Take it for what it is, that chance to rest, but come out strong. And my goodness, did they ever. I mean, a punctuation mark right there in that first inning. Detroit, just like Cleveland, we're talking about what's their script. What's the game plan that they want to follow, right? Well, for Detroit, it was this pitching chaos that they utilized in that series against Houston. And so they're going with the opener. Stephen Vogt's got to decide, well, how am I going to juggle my lineup? I know this is only going to be maybe a few hitters into this game before they decide to go to the bullpen. So do I bring in my versus lefty lineup? How do I stack it? We're seeing David Fry hitting second. I was interested to see what they were going to do at the top, whether it was going to be Thomas in the second spot or Fry. Who was going to get the start there? And so it ended up being Fry. But you start things off with Stephen Kwan, who I like that looked like the first half Stephen Kwan, who hits the double off the wall. And then here comes Fry, missing it by like a foot. I mean, instantly you're like, oh man, just a foot. You could have instantly taken a lead. Well, here comes Fry with a tremendous at-bat. And I think early on you see why Stephen Vogt kind of did what he did with this lineup. You wanted to to make choices difficult for Detroit. Do they decide to go to the reliever 5 batters into the game, or what would end up being the bulk guy 5 batters into the game? Well, that's what Vogt ended up doing. Well, man, did it work out? I mean, we've all said, right? Best deadline acquisition ever. Lane Thomas comes through with a 3-run bomb. And before you even know it, before you blink, it's 5-0. Heck of a way to start and silence any of those rest versus rust conversations, right? And I think to silence everybody that might be talking about it, but more importantly, silence it within yourselves, within the team. We're talking about a lot of guys that don't have, if they have playoff experience, it's not a ton. Some other guys that don't have a ton of playoff experience, you want to be able to silence any thought of, well, maybe we are rusty. Maybe there's something, to that sitting for 5 days narrative that people talk about. You take it off the table and almost immediately with that 3-run bomb and 5 runs in the first inning. The only thing I didn't love, I mean, ultimately 97 ended up proving okay with that series against the Yankees, but they brought it up. Oh, first time scoring 5 in the first inning since that 97 game, which Cleveland went on to lose. I wasn't okay with kind of the juju they were putting out into the atmosphere there. But you hand Tanner Bibee a 5-0 advantage. What do you think this man's going to do with it? Of course. And I think, it's easy. We sit back and say 5 runs. You should be able to defend that. That's okay for a starting pitcher to the caliber of Bibee. He should be okay. But there were a couple times where, things could have gotten at least a little bit more interesting, and he never let that happen. So credit to him. It's a unique sort of challenge. You'll take the 5 runs. They talked about this on the broadcast. You'll take the 5 runs and you'll be okay with it, right? More than okay with it. But it does present a different sort of challenge compared to a tight ball game. You don't want to ever let the other team even start to chip away at that lead, and he never let that happen. And so I give him a lot of credit. It's his first taste of playoff baseball, and we were curious how he was going to be able to funnel some of that emotion that we know lives deep in his heart, his belly. He's got a little bit of that bulldog in him that we kind of like to see, and it's fun to see that come out in the playoffs. But you don't know if he's going to be able to funnel all of that into his performance. Handing him a 5-run lead, hey, that helps. But also, top of the first inning, I'm sure you guys noticed kind of a similar thing. Things teetering on the edge, at least early, because Bibee's working with a little bit more energy, a little bit more juice, right? It's not a factor. He is able to get through there, and that felt extremely important. We're seeing a lot of stuff up in the zone, which I would rather see fastballs up out of the zone compared to leaving cookies in the middle of the plate for anybody to bring some sort of damage on. So if you're going to miss up and out of the zone. But we saw a little bit of that early for Bibee, but he settled in nicely in the 5 runs. And before you knew it, the Tigers have this game plan that they're going to try to roll their way through and try to take the series like they did against Houston. Well, you flip their plan on their head. And is it a bad plan because it doesn't work out? Well, you feel good about a plan when you go in and you hope that it works out. If they play the matchups again, would they go in a different direction? I don't know. We kind of saw Reese Olson really settle in and get that stretch of 9 in a row where he was able to finally settle into this game, and you could make we could have a conversation. I'm sure they are in Detroit about maybe he should have just started this game, maybe, but you have these meetings and you go through it and you arrive at what your decision is for a reason. And they felt like, let's take care of the top of the Guardians lineup before we get things over to Reese Olson. Well, didn't work so well. And they did end up having to ask themselves that question. Do we go to the bulk guy here 5 batters into the game? They did. And Lane Thomas made him pay. So it was a heck of a beginning of the game, a heck of a game 1. And I really want to start rolling through here some of your reactions. So let's go through it. Hammy Buck, hey, I was here. Cool for you. Tony says, inject game 1 into my veins. That's, yeah, it's nice when you can just roll all of your talented relievers out, but not really feel any sense of disaster looming. Not that you ever would with this bullpen anyway. Tony says, Lane freaking Thomas, Cleveland John, hello from section 555. What's up? Tyler LFG, baby. Yeah, let's go. Cade Smith. Yeah, Patrick bringing up Cade Smith as advertised. And we're going to get to this later on when Zach and I do a full show. I'm going to expand on all of these different thoughts. Again, this is just a quick post-game show, reaction show. where we can just have some fun after a game one win. Cade Smith and the rest of the bullpen, just we could talk about a stretch where they don't pitch and maybe they lose a little bit of something. No, nobody looked like they lost a little bit of anything. In fact, it's interesting that Stephen Vogt decides to still roll with the same bullpen despite having a big lead because none of these guys have pitched in like a week. And so I'm sure he's having a difficult conversation with himself, with coaches, where you don't want to overexpose some really good pitchers to a team when you don't have to, but they also still really believe in these guys. And the one thing you definitely don't want to have happen is give any sort of belief to Detroit that they're going to come back and even make this game interesting, and then you still have to go to your relievers, and they end up getting that look. So I guess you weigh, is it more important that some of these guys get their feet wet, that you just take care of business in game one, you don't fool around, you have the off day coming up tomorrow, so you don't have to worry about these guys not being available tomorrow? No. And maybe most importantly, Stephen Vogt has to ask himself, is it better? Yes, we risk giving Detroit another look at Cade Smith, perhaps later in the series, depending on how it goes. But it's more important that these guys are sharp and that they get the work that they haven't gotten outside of maybe some bullpens and simulated game action. So his vote ended up going that direction. I guess we'll see later in the series if that proves to be a factor. You funnel it away for later. But right now, you take your win and you live comfortably. You don't have to go to anyone that you wouldn't be feeling comfortable with. Though when you're looking at this postseason roster, how many guys in the bullpen would you say you actually don't feel comfortable with? Probably not many of them. But it's interesting. A lot of guys got to get their feet wet, get those firsts out of the way. Even Manzardo getting his first out of the way, pinch hitting later in the game. So we saw a script that Cleveland wanted to follow. We saw the script that Detroit wanted to follow. Cleveland executed theirs much, much better between Bibee, the bullpen. You've got, 4 2/3 from Bibee, going to Cade Smith for that inning and a third. Then Herron, Gaddis, and Clase shuts the door. Let's roll through some more of these. Let's see. B. Skrills, life in the fast lane. Tony, can Scoople start twice in 4 games? I think with the off days, it's definitely possible. Probably what Detroit will end up doing. Let's see here. Derek wants the music to play. Well, we got a full show coming up. I promise. We will do all the fun coming up later. This is just a chance for me to react, get some thoughts out there, for you to react as well, and us to have some fun. Let's see here. Joshua, Detroit fans on Twitter telling me Holton is better than any of our relievers. Holton is, I don't lose sight of the fact that is a good reliever. Don't take anything away from what the Guardians did in the first inning by saying he's not a good reliever. He is. That's what made what Cleveland did even more impressive, that they were able to look at what Detroit wanted to execute and say, not going to matter. We're going to put up a 5 spot in the first inning. Let's see here. What else we got? Joshua, I'm getting a Oral Hershiser, Mike Mussina feeling for Monday. Let's see. Was that the Sun game in 97? Lots of strikeouts in that game. Diesel blueprint game. That's why we can win it all game. Yeah, that's what Cleveland wants to do. What they're going to do in game 2 will be fascinating. Do you just continue to rely as heavily as they did on the bullpen? Obviously, what the score is will dictate some of that. If it's another blowout, will Vogt just continue to roll with his guys? Will he look to get some of the other less experienced arms in there that made the roster, whether it's Zabrowski, whether it's Walters? Guys that they're further down the pecking order, but I feel really good about those guys too. It'll be interesting. We'll see. Had to get game 1. It feels extremely important you get game 1 when you know who's looming in game 2. That likely Cy Young Award winner for Detroit. It was big to get this one, and that's the message that Detroit will tell themselves. Hey, it is a 5-game series. It's not even what it was this past series that they survived with Houston, where 1 game really is a significant swing. This one, you swallow it, you take it, you say it's just 1, 7-0. It's just 1, but we're coming back with our ace. And for Cleveland, they got to feel pretty good about themselves that they overcame any of those rust conversations that we could be having. Let's see what else we got here. Justin says the bullpen carrying them to a title. Book it. That's certainly the way that they draw it up. Let's see here. Patrick, Bibee showed a lot of grit today, kept his emotions in check for the most part, too. Yeah, as we said, you could see in that first inning that he was a little extra juice there, a little amped up, but I get it. It's your first playoff start. Even this is a team that you are familiar with, and this is not quite as we thought of in years past, the matchups against the big bad Red Sox and Yankees and Astros. It's Detroit. This matchup has happened so many times, but it's still a playoff game. I expect that there is going to be that extra juice. And he was dealing with it a little bit early, but maybe going through this experience and certainly having a 5-0 lead to work through it with, maybe that helps him because now you kind of you learn how to work with a little bit extra adrenaline. It'd be interesting to see what he does in his next time out. Is he better for it? What adjustments will Detroit make? But 4 2/3 innings with 6 strikeouts and 1 walk, 4 hits. That's it. I mean, that is a ace performance. Maybe not going as deep as you think a typical ace would, but why would you need to? Why would you need to when you have a bullpen like this and an off day coming up tomorrow? Would Vogt have left Bibee in a little bit longer if he didn't have that off day coming up? We won't know. Perhaps he would have, but you use that to your advantage, right? And as we said, these guys haven't pitched since the end of the regular season, so it's been almost a week for them. Relievers, I mean, everybody is operating with some degree of a routine every single day, but I would think a reliever, all of these guys probably wanted to get in the game regardless of what the score is. I mean, Clase was probably petitioning to add games to the schedule just so he could get in there and pitch. It's been so long since he's been on the mound. So I understand, again, there is some risk here when you run guys out as much as I think the Guardians will here, as the game plan will dictate for Vogt. You do give them extra looks, and not just how a stuff moves, but also are there tells? Are there certain things in a delivery that you can pick up the more you see somebody, or a guy fans his glove out a little bit more on a breaking ball compared to a fastball? And those things can be critical in a short series. Most important thing, well, first most important, win the game and make sure there's no question about that. But second, these guys, it's probably just more important that you get them to work so that they're sharp in the rest of this series and hopefully for longer than that. Let's see here. Mike, I just lost it. Where'd you go? Comments are overtaking here. Sorry, Mike, I lost your comment. Oh, here it is. I think they acquired Thomas as a complimentary piece and hoped he could be more. And how great would it be if he were that dude? Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about this coming up more in our full Game 1 recap with Zach when we sit down and do that. It'll be either later tonight or early tomorrow. I'm sure we'll talk more about that. But, I mean, as much as we try to tell ourselves that we're going to take a big picture, right, approach, it's always what have we seen most recently that kind of drives what we believe will happen. We're human. And, right after they acquired him, guy looked like the worst hitter on the planet. And I think we all had questions about whether or not an acquisition like Thomas, who just thrives against lefties, but on his best day, he's trying to just be league average against righties, whether that was going to lift the offense enough. And those questions were fair. We asked those questions right after the deadline, but he was so bad in August that I'm sure he wasn't laughing, but it was comically bad. Like no one could you couldn't even go out there and try to be as bad as he was. And it almost got tough to even have any intelligent conversations about it because it was beyond any sort of conventional wisdom that he could be this bad. But credit to him for bouncing back and then, of course, coming through with that massive hit. And yeah, Cleveland had already taken the lead early, and you were seeing some good quality at-bats early, I thought. But there's a big difference between taking a 2-0 lead and a 5-0 lead. I think we all can agree. So massive hit, one that, depending on where this team goes, we're going to remember. We're definitely going to remember. Let's see. As we get through these comments real quick, again, we'll be here for another few minutes. I'm going to roll through some of these, and then we'll come back with a full show at some point later on. Justin says, Vogt out coached a World Series champion manager. I'll take it. Yeah, there was some good strategic maneuvering, not just early with deciding to go with Fry and then with Thomas in the 5 spot, making it tough for Detroit. I thought that they would pull Fry for a pinch hitter. And in fact, I tweeted it. I guess I'm an idiot for thinking, why would you let Fry hit in the 6th? Well, that lever that Vogt pulled actually worked too. He leaves him in there against the righty, 2 on, 2 out. and he hits a 2-run double to completely put it out of reach and be 7-0. But some levers being pulled there, whether it's in relief, how he decided to use the relievers, even once it wasn't even a big deal, but how he decided to go with Heron to begin the eighth, and then Detroit has to go to a pinch hitter. You bring in Gaddis, they go to another pinch hitter, so you burn one of their better hitters against the lefty, and he's out of the game of no consequence whatsoever now because he's done. Ultimately, it didn't matter, but that still was another positive. Vogt did a pretty good job in his first. I mean, this is his first. We're talking about all these guys with their firsts in the postseason. This is also Stephen Vogt's first managerial go. Now, obviously, he's been there several times as a player. In fact, they highlighted he had the walk-off against the Tigers several years ago. But yeah, great job by Vogt in the early games. And I know they plan for a lot of this stuff. It's not just Vogt. It's everybody on the bench next to him, whether he's navigate pitching or looking down the bench. Just there are so many people in his ear, but he's done such a good job of being able to take all of those different suggestions and into practice today. It ends up working out pretty well. And yes, they have full conversations before the game even begins. Hey, if we get to the sixth inning and this is the situation, what do we do here? Here are a few different things we could do. So I think first-year managers are probably prepared more than they were in the past with data and just going over different scenarios. Doesn't take away from the job that Vogt did in his first game. All right, let's roll through some of these more drastic. 6-5-1. What a statement! Knocking the pretty kitties knocking them in the teeth in game one puts the pressure on Detroit. Cade Smith needs to get Rookie of the Year votes. Yeah, I'm interested to see where he ends up finishing. He should get some love there. I don't think he'll win it, but I think the guy should be in the top 3 based on the way that this guy pitched. Maybe he gets overlooked slightly because there are other rookie relievers in this bullpen that were almost as good as he was. Surrounded by too much greatness in this particular year, perhaps. Patrick, it was smart of Vogt to throw the big guns, break the Tigers' confidence immediately. We'll see. Let's see here. Jake loves seeing Cookie and Biebs in the dugout. Yeah, I know they referenced that early. It's easy to forget Bieber. 2 games into the season and he's done. How much different would this season have gone if you would have gotten the Bieber we saw in the first 2 games? Now, I'm not going to argue with where they're at now, but imagine having Bieber and then Bibee lined up for game 1 and game 2. There'd be far less chaos, I would imagine. But hey, with this bullpen, maybe we shouldn't be arguing. It's just fine. A few more. Robert, how do we feel about Noel making the roster? I actually don't mind that at all. I know some of his at-bats in September were not that great, where we saw a lot more of the guy that's going to strike out and swing at things in the opposing batter's box. I know. But I was actually encouraged. I thought we saw a couple of really good at-bats from him. One, he wasn't rewarded on a ball that absolutely was out of the strike zone and low. I don't know if that was some sort of makeup call for the one that Jose didn't get in the first inning. But far more agreed. The Jose one was borderline. I'd seen some tweets. Oh, they didn't get that call. Yeah, because maybe a seam of the ball touched the strike zone. It's not like an egregious call like the Noel one was. But he had 2 really good at-bats. He should have had 2 walks. He ended up getting 1. How about his dad able to be in attendance, too? I think having someone with that elite power that even if he has looked foolish in 3 at-bats, he could come up in that 4th one and change the game with 1 swing. They needed a presence like that, whether it's starting or on the bench, so I'm happy that he made the roster. I don't know how much he will start. I don't know how much he'll end up being just a pinch hitter in some of these games. How he was deployed today had to do with just the way that the bullpens of Detroit were going to be used. But I would imagine Noel's going to be back in there tomorrow or on game 2 for a matchup against Skubal. I'm happy that he ended up making the roster, even though he did struggle down the stretch. I still think you're just living for that 1 swing in the playoffs. 1 swing not only changes a game, changes an entire series. A couple more. Patrick, I said we needed Thomas, Fry, Noel, and Manzo to do something for us to go anywhere, and we got both Fry and Thomas coming through today. Noel played his part, says B. Skrills. We used our big guns, but they still haven't seen Walter, Sabrowski, or Cantillo. Yeah, we have all these great relievers, but we also have some more that you haven't seen yet. We'll see what ends up happening the rest of this series, how often Vogt is willing to go to those. Walters and Sabrowski we barely saw in September, but they absolutely should have been on the roster based not just in results, but their stuff looked as good as some of the big boys in this bullpen. Yeah, I want them to be here. I'm glad that they made the roster. And let's see, John, great game. What a trade for Thomas. Yes, that's what we were all saying all of August. And Michael, you will come back again and be our final comment here. Thoughts on Freeman over Noel for Monday? Uh, I would stick with Noel. I mean, I haven't dug deep on repertoire what Noel might not what he might struggle against. I don't know. I would much prefer having Noel in there against the lefty over Freeman, who probably made this roster because they trust him more in center field as a defensive replacement than they likely did Angel Martinez. And then Freeman can be a guy that can still bounce around, play some infield. It was an interesting choice. We'll see. We'll see. So much has gone well in game one that I'm just going to say, I believe that Stephen Vogt's going to push all the right buttons, pull all the right levers, and we'll see where it goes. Well, thanks for being here with us. Again, this was just a quick react. We did about 30 minutes here. Thanks for being here. We'll try to do as many of these quick reacts as we can as the playoff unfolds. I promise you, you want content. We have so much content coming, whether it's Zach and I getting together to do our full shows, whether it's my solo react shows. Maybe I can grab a guest or two. Who knows? Who knows what might happen? Who knows how long we'll be doing this? Hopefully for quite a while, all the way through October, although that is already giving Zach major anxiety as he's expecting his second child, perhaps as the World Series starts. But we have much more coming up over the next several weeks. And then go over to Patreon, patreon.com/SelbyIsGodcast. You get those extra episodes that we do throughout the week. We already have a ton of episodes coming up. Some of them are going to drop over at Patreon. Also, joining the Patreon gets you access to the Discord, and that place is where you want to be for these playoff games. The conversations are fun. It's a good environment, good atmosphere. Only occasionally do we have to break up some fights in there, but it's all good. It's all in good fun. So come join the Patreon, where you get access to the Discord, a chance to chat with other fellow Guardians fans. It's a great community over there, and get those bonus episodes when they drop. So thanks for hanging out with us, everybody. Game one goes to the Guardians. How about that? 7-0, just as we all expected. They expected Cleveland and Detroit, right, in the ALDS, and we expected certainly 7-0. Easy breezy all the way through. Thanks for hanging out with us, and we'll see you later tonight or early tomorrow for a full episode. Until then, enjoy this one. Thanks for being here.